So let me just do a quick reminder of what I just mentioned to you about the Torah being, excuse me, not the Torah, the Shabbat, because the Shabbat is crucially important to remember this. It's in Davarim, Book of Deuteronomy, chapter number 5, verse number 15. You can remember it by, the fives in it, 5, 15, So what it says is this. It says that you are to remember that you were a slave. You were a slave, okay? This word they have here, slave, is pretty good, but also too, we understand that that word also can be translated as an aved. And aved is a servant, okay? So a slave here is what they would call an aved. Aleph and a bet and a dalet, okay? Which I will put in English, aved, okay? Aved means to serve, okay? It means someone who's in the service of someone else, okay? It means to be doing something. So you were a slave, okay? You were a servant in the land of Mitzrayim. I want you to remember that, okay? Remember, in Hebrew is called Zakar, Z-A-K-A-R, okay? Zakar. And it means as a memorial. That's what a Zakar is. It's a memorial. So I need you to always memorialize this, because I need you to remember this. So service, being a servant and being a slave is one and the same. So when we say that we're a servant of the Holy One of Israel, we are his slave, okay? But he's telling us that I'm the one, Yahweh Elohim, your Elohim, brought you out from there with a strong hand and an outstretched arm, okay? Often we forget this. Often this is not part of our vernacular. This is not part of our conversation. We talk about the Shabbat, right? We talk about how holy it is. We talk about how set apart it is. And we talk about how it is a sign, but often we don't remember, okay? We don't zakar the fact that it's Yahweh who brought us out of that place, okay? Therefore, Yahweh, your Elohim, okay? Meaning personally, yours has ordered you to keep the day of Shabbat. Keep, of course, is to guard and to do, okay? I often talk about guarding. Guarding for us is not necessarily that which is on the outside of us that poses a threat to us, okay? When Yah talks about guarding, he's talking about being on watch. And one of the things that I believe that I failed at, I have to express one of my failures to you, is the fact that I guard on the outside. I try to keep that from the outside to guard. But Yah has revealed to me that I need you to guard the inside. And what does that mean, to guard the inside? We have to guard the inside of the community. That means within our families, we have to make sure that we guard this day, okay? So we're worried about everybody on the outside of everything. And we're trying to guard from that perspective. Hey, I'm letting everybody know this is a day that I keep. I can't do this with you. I can't do that. That's fine. But if you have a family and anyone inside of your domain, you have to guard it even from them. You have to protect it. So in my own experience, I'm being instructed, make sure that your family understands, like for real, like if you hear something that doesn't sound right or something is being done, you got to be on it. You can't just, let it go. You have to let things be what it is. So often, sometimes that gets, when you have a kid or you have children, they know what to do, but it doesn't mean that you put your guard down. And I'm not saying that my kids are breaking the Shabbat, but what I am saying is I have to make sure that I guard it, even with them, and I keep them on a high alert about what this day actually represents. Hopefully that makes sense for you. Okay. So this is a time that Yah has said that I need you to remember this day. And why? Because it has to do with you being a slave. Shabbat Shalom, Sister Claudia. So
Shabbat Shalom.
Okay, so this has to guarding with that because you're a slave. Okay. Let me take you to another place to show you something about this relationship that often we don't get a chance to talk about because we don't want to think about it. Okay. But the Holy One of Israel has instructed us to continue to teach and to learn and to get enlightened with the Torah. Okay. Let's see. We do our Torah portions for the sake of learning about the Holy One of Israel, but also too, so we can continue to enlighten ourselves because Torah is light. That's what the Torah is. Okay. The commandment is a lamp, but the Torah is light. Let me show that to you. You can find this in the book of Proverbs. It's going to be in chapter number 6. Verse number 23, I believe. Yes, for the commandment, the mitzvah is a lamp. And, right, Torah is light. That's what the Torah is. So the more that you and I learn about the Torah, the more light you and I get. Light is given to help us look within ourselves to examine where we are and who we are and some of the areas in our life that need to be managed and need to be dealt with. It's not an accident that we're going through the Torah portions. The Torah is the light that gives us understanding to look into the mind of the Holy One of Israel, because he's given us this light. Okay. And what did this do? And the reproofs that discipline are the way to life. Okay. So the commandment, mitzvah, is a lamp, and the Torah is light, and reproofs that discipline are the way of life. Okay. So the reproofs are what's disciplining us, because you will never find out what's wrong with you if we don't read the Torah. The Torah is what's going to give us knowledge and understanding. The Torah is what they would call the instructions. And anytime we receive instructions, they're often applied with reproofs to let us know where we're going wrong and what adjustments we need to make. When a shepherd is leading his sheep, he doesn't beat the sheep. He might prod them, he might, grab them, and he might poke them, but he doesn't beat them. He doesn't do that to them. He's very patient, and he understands who they are, and he's leading them in the way that's going to be good for them for their learning. That's why in any capacity of learning, there's always going to be some reproof. There's always going to be some correction. There's always going to be some discipline. Okay. So that's why the Holy One of Israel is requiring us to understand the direction that he wants us to go through the Torah. So you're going through the Torah portions are not in vain. They're actually good for us because they bring us to a place where we can be enlightened about what Yah's intentions are and what is he saying to us, because he wants to instruct us. I want to go now to the book of Vayikra. And Vayikra means, and he called. Okay. That's what it means. And he called. Vayikra. Okay. Vayikra. Let me put it up right here. Vayikra. Okay. Vayikra. Okay. Kara is the, I got to be careful writing backwards. Okay, so the Y is and he, and then Kara, Okay. I'm writing backwards. Kara means he called. Okay. That's the name of this book. Wayikra. It's not Leviticus. This is a Greek name. So let's name it this because it has to do with the priests, the Levites. So we'll call it Leviticus. That's where we get the confusion when people talk about, oh, well, that's under the Leviticus. That's under the Levitical law. Levitical, which they don't fully understand that this is a book that has to do with he, and the he here is Yahweh. Yahweh is calling. Okay. Yahweh is calling what? He's calling. He's calling who? He's calling the Levi. He's telling them what their responsibilities are, and he's letting them know. But I want to share with you what some of those responsibilities are, because often we don't really get a chance to talk about what it is that Levi was supposed to do. And this is the reason why the community, you guys remember what Levi means? You guys remember what Levi means?
Does it mean joined or united?
Yes, absolutely. Excellent. So Levi has to do with the idea of, like Sister Pam had just said, to join, okay? To make a connection between one party and the other. They're the link, if for a lack of better terms, they're the link that connects us to him. Okay. So in our connection, in our joining to the Holy One of Israel, they're the ones who's responsible for the Torah. All right. And as we noticed in the book of Deuteronomy, the words, he tells the Levi that he's the one who's responsible for teaching the Torah. Okay. This is what is supposed to be taught. When they were joined for Sukkot, every 7 years on Shemitah, they're supposed to read, which is Kara, again, Kara, or Quara. Okay. They're supposed to Kara, a Kof, a Resh, and an Aleph. They're supposed to read and call out and what they would call proclaim this, which is the Torah. That's what they're supposed to do. So they're the link that joins Israel and the nation to the Holy One. Okay. So, and within that family, what do we have? We have a Kohanim, a Kohen or a Kohanim, which are priests. I praise the Holy One of Israel this morning for all of you, because he's trying to teach us something here. You get the priests through the family of Levi. Okay. They provide a family of priests that goes under whose family? Somebody tell me. Whose family?
Aharon.
Yes, it's Aharon's family. Okay. Spelled that wrong. Aharon's family and his sons. Okay. They had other family members like Korach and all these other people, but they weren't the family that Yah chose. He chose this family, which is Aaron, which that's why they often say that Moshe was like a priest, because he was doing all the inauguration. Even though Yah did not call him that, he was still operating as one because he inaugurated these people. He's the one who dressed them and all kind of things. He did everything for them. So you have the Kohanim, which are part of that family. And then, so that's one aspect, the Kohanim. Okay. And then he has the Leviim. And the Leviim are the ones who are responsible for what? What are they supposed to do?
They were responsible for taking care of the things of the temple, maybe?
Yes, absolutely. Great job. So the priests are responsible for the altar, which has to do with the sacrifices and the offerings and the vows and all those types of things, okay? The Leviim, on the other hand, are responsible for the maintenance and the in the carrying, the carrying the loads. They carry loads for stuff, and they were the ones who were supposed to go get the tithes and bring them to the Leviim. They're the ones supposed to take the offerings from the hands of the people and bring them to the Kohanim. They're the ones who's supposed to bring the other, like I said, the tithes, the offerings to them. No one was allowed to even touch these people because they were holy. They were set apart. Okay. And these individuals were what they would call an assistant to them. They would assist them in their responsibilities, but they couldn't go in, they couldn't make offerings or none of those things. All right. So as you can see, within a tribe, Yah has worked to make sure that things work out for everybody. Now, the question for you guys, did the Levites or any of the priests or any of those people get any inheritance of the land?
No.
No, they never received any inheritance of land. However, they did receive an inheritance of property. Okay, a lot of people don't know that. They didn't get any land, so there's no land for them, but there was property. They had houses that they would build or was theirs. They had that had farmland that was attached to it, and they did live in cities. Okay, so but they didn't receive any inheritance in the land. They received the property. Okay, that's what they received, property like houses, and they owned oxen, they owned cattle, and all the people would provide them with the things that they needed. Remember, Yah says at the end of the 7 years or the Jubilee, you would come and would bring your offerings, and then therefore you could be able to take care of the widow, the stranger, the fathers, and the Levi, because they would get some things, but they didn't get all what they needed. So what we're finding in this layout of how Yah does things, he gives each tribe what they need. Okay, so there's 12 tribes. Each one of those tribes received a portion, except for Levi. They received land as an inheritance. Okay, and within that land, in certain parts of the land, okay, when they divided the land up into all their different portions, okay, they put Yehuda right here, and then you have Benjamin here, and etc. Okay, and then the other ones, Issachar, and so they go all the way up and down. Okay, in each parts of these regions of lands that they had, okay, some of them would have other things that other ones didn't have. For example, in the land of Asher, he had a lot of olives. He had so much olives that he had olive oil where they said that he would put his foot in olive oil. That's how much olive oil he had, which is a commodity for the whole entire house of Israel. Yah said he's going to bless him with a land that's full of olives. This is in chapter number 33. And he would also bless him with many sons, and which includes daughters. Okay, when it talks about sons, you got to have daughters too, not just males, daughters. And his name means happy. You got to ask, why was he so happy? Well, because he's having a lot of sons, he's having a lot of daughters, and they were having a lot of oil. Okay, olive oil was their export. Okay, and so all the other tribes would come and they would benefit. Asher was a benefit. He would benefit the whole entire nation with oil. They needed oil to do their cooking. They needed oil to put on their skin, in their hair. They needed oil, so it was part of a staple for them. Okay, So in each part of these lands, and we're just using him as one of the examples, in all the different aspects of the land, some of the other ones would have more trees than other ones. Some would else have different type of fruits than the other ones. So Yah didn't give everything to one family. He spread everything out amongst the whole entire family, okay? Around everyone, because he wanted them to have the idea of sharing. They had to share, okay? You know, you got what I need and I have what you need. Let's work together. You have all these wonderful sons and daughters, you know, so people, all the tribes of Israel would go because to Asher to go look for what? To go look for a husband or look for a wife. You see? Because they were a happy people. They were honored. They were very, very happy. You know, who wants to marry somebody who's had a sour attitude, right? Or introduced. So when they went around these people, this is what they were like. So that's just one aspect, okay, of that family. We're going to touch on a couple. I did 2 days ago when I talked about some of these aspects of the tribes, but I didn't go into real detail. Here, I want to talk about Yehuda. And matter of fact, before I go to 26, let me just get out of here and stop this share and go somewhere where you can really see it. It's unfair to you that I would write everything with that right there. All right, so maybe it would be best if I would do this. Okay. All right. It would cause me to stop doing a lot of writing. It would, yeah. Let me stop right here, share something else. I'm always thinking, what would be best for us? What would be the best thing to share with Israel? Here you go. This is better. All right. Pull that up. All right. There we go. All right. I'm going to bring this chart up again. It's one of the little charts I made for us. It's better than my sloppy handwriting. All right. So here it is. I'm going to just deal with a couple of these sons. Okay. So we've already dealt with Levi. We already talked about what he is. He's to join. He's joining between us and the Creator. Okay. Our Elohim. That's what his job is to do. All right. Basically, too, his name has to do with the idea of being a foundation, because that's what a Kohen means. That's where the word Kohen comes from. Kohen, okay, comes from the idea of a foundation. They're the foundation of the community. If they crack under pressure, then the whole community falls, you see? So that's how important they are, all right? Now we talked about Asher, but I want to talk about this other one, okay? Yehuda. But before I go to Yehuda, let me just try to calm down and stay, because I'm excited about what we're doing. What else do we know about Levi? We know that Levi is, he's the one who's responsible for teaching us. He's a teacher and he's a servant. He's there to teach the people, but he's also there to serve the people. Okay, that's their job. If they're going to be the ones responsible for joining everyone to the Holy One of Israel, there's a certain type of attitude that they have to have. There's a certain type of mindset that they have to have. Number one, and these are things that can be applied to us as his people. Why do I say that? Because I told you there's 12 tribes, and each one of the tribes have a certain characteristic that can be beneficial, whether it's negative. Like here in Reuven, he slept with his father's wife. Is that a positive or is it a negative? Well, it's a negative. So what is it? You can learn from this. You can learn what happens if you go against the Holy One of Israel. You will actually be disinherited. You lose your right as a firstborn. So that's something positive we can take from a negative. You could take something from a negative and take a positive from it and turn it into a positive. So often when you see bad things that happen, it's not so you could say, oh, that's just too bad. No, you're supposed to learn from it. The Holy One of Israel used Reuben's experience to teach us something, just like he's going to teach us something about Levi. Okay. So this Levi tribe is the one who's responsible for teaching and being a servant to the people. Their responsibility to teach has to do with the Torah, which are the instructions on how to live. And if something comes up, he says, you go and you guys handle it. If anything ever happens, I need you to take care of it. Because they're also not only used as the teachers and the servant, but they're also judges. They judge matters. That's what they do. That's what he was putting them in place for. So they could be the people that joined between the creator and the people. So they're the ones who have to be responsible for judgment. And that's why it says if the Levi gave a judgment, if you went to one of the Kohanim and they gave you a judgment and you went against that judgment, then you would be put to death, because they're the intermediator between Yah and the people. Part of Levi is that they had to operate from a moral supremacy. Okay, I don't know if I spelled that right, but supremacy. Okay, they had to be morally high. They had to work from perfection, the high ground. They had to operate like that. Okay, and they had to be above reproach. They had to be selfless. Okay, I'm gonna write all these things all over the place. Selflessness. We don't hear a lot about that. We hear a lot about selfishness, but we never hear about selflessness. Okay. And this is the character of the Levi. This is a character of a teacher. This is a character of anyone in authority. This is the character that had to be prominent in this community through this family. Yah used this family to teach Israel all these different things. They had to make themselves secondary. They had to make themselves inferior. They weren't above the people. They had to be above reproach, but they were never above the people. Often we look at people who are esteemed high and say, oh, I'm jealous of that. I want to be like that. I want to be I want to be in a high place. I want to receive what they're receiving. And often we don't think about what it takes to be in that position, to be so close, because they're close to the Holy One. They're the ones joined. They're close to him. There's a cost to being close with the Holy One of Israel. We shouldn't be so willing to run and want that position. They're the ones who had to make the divine declarations. And if you make a divine declaration from the Holy One of Israel, you would have to have moral perfection. These individuals did not live for themselves. Their life and their behavior and their attitude and their conduct was for the sake of the community. They didn't live for themselves. King David didn't live for himself. Their focus, I'm going to change my color right here. Their focus was the nation. That's what their focus was. Their focus was not on themselves. in terms of why they're doing what they're doing. They had a purpose. And the purpose is to look out for the nation, to look out for the health and wellness of the community. You have to be devoted, people. They're teaching us how to be devoted. They're not set apart for the sake of saying, well, we can't take anything from them. Just like when the tribes of Israel were going to, because they lived amongst each other, they would have to go to Asher for olive oil. He was blessed with olive oil for the sake of not for himself, but he was blessed with that for the sake of giving it and providing it to the whole entire nation. That oil was used in the sanctuary. The Leviim, this family, would go there to go get the oil. See? So what can we learn from that? We learn that different characteristics and aspects of people can be used and utilized for everyone's benefit. Not so we can have bragging rights and say, I'm the one, I'm Levi, so I'm close to Yah, so you're not close. Or, hi, I'm Asher, and I have all this olive oil, and we're rich, and you're not. You know? No. It was for the benefit of everybody. So what can we learn from this? We can learn that the Torah is the document. The Torah is the voice of reason. The Torah is the voice that allows everyone to be connected and to use what they have had to be connected to each other, thus being connected to the Holy One of Yisrael. I have a question here. Did the tribes pay for the oil? Yes, absolutely. That's a great question, Okoti. Yes, they did. I'm sorry for that one right there. Yes, they did pay for it. They would trade, or they would give some silver, and they would give some gold, or whatever they did. Or they'll give some of the best pomegranates that they had, because guess what? You can't just eat oil. You have to have some fruits, or you have to have some grain. Okay, so every part of the region of the land was given to those sons. Now, one of the things I want to let us all know about this land is that often we think about how we go to the land and how we're the ones who are developing the land. Okay. The land was given to us not so we can develop it only, but the land was given to Israel to develop Israel, to develop them as a people, to develop them in their character, to develop them in their behavior. That's why we were given the land. Because outside of the land, we had nothing but oppression, as we do today. Outside of the land, there's no sharing. There's no benefit. Outside of the land, you and I are not learning what it means to work with our hands. We're not learning what it means to conduct our families in a way that's conducive to what's good for everyone. A lot of us are doing what we know the best, what we know how, but what I do in my home is not what someone else is doing in their home. Yah has decided to use agriculture to change his people's behavior. That's why he brought us to that land. It's a good land. It's the most beautiful of all lands. It's rich. It's rich with copper. It's rich with iron. It's rich with minerals. It's rich with waters and streams, and it's rich with wells, and it's rich with pomegranates and wheat and barley. It's rich with raisins and figs. It's rich. You understand? So in the development of the people, they learn how to live amongst each other in an environment that allows them to implement what they're being taught. So Yah has chosen this group, this family, Levi, in all different aspects to teach us how to live amongst each other, how to judge situations. So remember, he said, if the situation gets where you can't judge it yourselves, then bring it to us and we'll give you the decision. Once that decision was made, it's called case law. You don't have to keep going back because they'll say, well, last time this is what happened. Last time this happened. And I want to be clear that often when I talk about how Yah says, if you violate me, I'll kill you, right? And everyone goes, oh, well, I'm scared. Well, you should be. But let's talk about what are the other sides of the judgments of Yah. What Yah is looking for is for us to be fair, to do that which is right, to do that which is what they call Yashar, which that's where we get our name Yesharun from, meaning the upright one. Yah desire for us is to be upright in everything that we do, in our balances, to be just in how when we weigh out our wheat and barley, how if we're going to weigh out the olive oil that we don't skim on it, how if you tell me that you're going to give me the best, then that's what I pay for, give it to me. If I'm going to work for you for 6 years, then you release me in the 7th year. And if I'm working with you, treat me a certain way. That's why we are focused on the Torah. We're focused on the Torah because this is what we should be focused on. We don't need, and I want to be 100% clear to you today. If Yah's intention was for us to only hear the Torah through the Levi'im while we're in exile, then we would all be done. What do you do when you're in exile? What do you do? Well, according to the book of Devarim, chapter number 30, Moshe said, when you're scattered among the nations, where you've been exiled, and you start thinking about it, you and your household will decide that, hey, we need to change our behavior. You'll go and you'll do everything that I instructed you to do. So that's what Moshe said. So what are we doing? You and I are going to the Torah as a reference to hear the words of the living Elohim, to tell us, how does he think? What does he say? How does he feel? So are we getting everything? No, because he says that when you go back, when I come and I cleanse you, I'm going to give you a new heart. I'm going to give you a new spirit. I'm going to do the Torah differently. I'm going to download it into your mind. Right now, we don't have the download. All we have is that which is written. And we should be thankful for that. We should not cry and whine about not having an offering. Because he says that sacrifice and offering thou wouldest not. You didn't want that. But what did you do? You opened my ear so I can say, here I am. Why are you asking me for who? Here I am. David had said these words because he wanted Yah to know that I'm available for you. I'm going to live a selflessness life. I'm going to make myself inferior and I'm going to lift you up because you're worthy of all praise and adoration. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give myself over to you to learn how to be moral and how to have an idea of moral supremacy. I'm going to come over to you so I can be ennobled, meaning I can be lifted up to a higher standard of living. I'm going to come over to you so I can elevate my mind. So my idea of my existence has to do with duty and responsibility. I'm going to give myself over to you because I know that I need to be taught. And I want to be a servant. I want to listen to your voice. I want to know how to do that which is right and how to do that which is acceptable to you. I don't want to live in a way that's offensive to you or disrespectful to you. I want to live in a way that glorifies you by eating the right foods and teaching others to do the same, so we can develop a behavior and an attitude that's conducive to what glorifies you. I want to live not for myself, but I want to live for the sake of the community in which I live in. I want to focus not on what makes me happy, but I want to focus on the nation as a whole. What can I do to be a contributor to the family that you call me to be in? What can I do to serve the living Elohim in the manner that pleases him? What can I do? How can I join myself to this great and awesome and majestic King? That's what it means of here I am. Being a servant and being a follower of the Holy One of Israel, we find that the son of Levi, okay, which is the Kohanim and the Levi'im, they had a different type of mindset, okay? The mindset in which they had was one that sometimes when we look at it, it could be quite terrifying of what this mindset is, okay? The mindset that they had was all or nothing. And what do I mean by that? When the golden calf was made, they said, Moshe had asked a question, which Yah has always asked everyone, who is with him? Who's with him? That's the question. And this family right here joined themselves to the Holy One of Israel by saying that your Torah takes precedence over family, it takes precedence over emotions, it took precedence over relationships, it took precedence over human love and affection. How did it take precedence? How did it become that which is a priority or to be the most important thing to them? They were willing to set aside human emotion, love, and affection to guard the Torah of Yahweh. They understood it to the point where they put swords on their sides and they killed 3,000 people. Out of all the group that joined themselves at that time of the golden calf, not everybody there joined themselves to that golden calf. The 3,000 people were the ones who joined themselves to that golden calf. And the other people, by sheer virtue of being there and not saying nothing, joined themselves to that. See, you could be in a group and just, oh, I'm not going to say anything. So you think you're getting a pass. Yah had made a clear distinction. Who is with him and who is not in this family? These people said, we're going to join ourselves to the Holy One of Israel. That's why they have that rank of being close to him. You and I can adopt and adapt that type of mindset. It's not for the sake of them just being the family that he chose and no one else can ever desire to be next to the Holy One of Israel. But Yah has used Levi as a joiner, as a link, as I expressed before. They're a link that joins us to Yah. So if you and I want to be close to the Holy One of Israel, you and I have to join ourselves and be linked up with the ones who instruct us in the things of Yahweh, which is the Torah. There is no excuse to say that there's no priesthood. We can join ourselves through this book, which they call Vayikra. And Yahweh called Levi to the responsibility of teaching the Torah. That's why he spoke to them, and that's why that book is there. It has to become part of our mindset. Our mindset has to be removed from a Western mindset to an Eastern mindset. You cannot worship our Elohim with a Western mindset. You cannot be about self. The West is about self. The East is selflessness. They care about everybody instead of themselves. Here in the West, it's about how well you do. Here in the West, it's about how nice your house is. In the West, is how successful you are and how your family is. It's not about what is good for the whole community. Well, how am I to adopt this mindset? And how do I make that adaptation? How do I adapt to it? Because you're telling me that I should have a different mindset. How is it possible for me to have an Eastern mindset when I live in the West? Yah then tells us that we have a responsibility to do that which he calls to shuv. This is really pronounced as a V, but I put it in shuv because that's what it is. It means to turn, to return. You can return to Yah with a right mindset. You don't need a priesthood. You don't need an offering. You do not need a sacrifice. What you do need to do is you need to make up your mind. Because Yah told us to return to him with a whole heart, which is in Hebrew, your mind. You have to make up your mind. You have to make a decision that I'm going to guard everything that the Holy One of Israel has said to me. I want to also tell you about not only was Levi joining us to him, Levi was what they would call a promoter. What did he promote? What did he promote? What was he a promoter, and what was his intent? His intention. His intention is to promote. Wait a minute. This went backwards. This thing is trying to break my flow, and I'm not going to allow it to. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Praise the Holy One of Israel. He's a promoter and he's a guardian. A guardian of what? He's a promoter and he's a guardian of the covenant. Okay. Not just the Torah, the covenant, the agreement between Yah and his people. See, the relationship He does this by giving. How does he do it? By giving. Giving what? Knowledge and observance of the, what's wrong with my pen? Of the Torah. That's how he became a promoter. His job is to promote the Torah. His job is to promote the Torah, the knowledge and the observation of it, because when you observe, technical difficulty. When you observe and obey and give knowledge of the Torah, you then will be able to keep the covenant. You will be in a right position to where Yah will give you what you need. Because part of the covenant for us is the fact that Yah says that I'm going to let you live in the land and I will give you the rain and I will feed you and your family and you will live in safety. And that's something that often we don't really take the time to think about. In the coming time, and I'll show this to you, in the time that's coming, we find, get right here. We find in the book of, right there, Ezekiel. It's in the book of Ezekiel. Yah tells Ezekiel, Yah-Kaziel, that's his real name, Yah-Kaziel. He tells him, I need you to go tell the exiles what my intentions are, what my plans are, okay? So he goes on, he tells them, okay? And here's a little snippet of that. Verse 5, he says, and he said to me, human being, pay attention and see with, I wonder, you can't see it. My sharing has paused, why? Okay, well, we'll get out. And we'll go back in again so you guys can see it. You guys can't see something, you got to let me know because this computer sometimes tells me, here it is. Here you go. So now they can see my application. Okay, so now Yahweh said to me, human being, pay attention and see with your eyes and hear with your ears everything I will tell you about the regulations. Okay. So this wasn't, it was in a vision that he gave him, and he told him, I need you to pay attention. I need you to see with your eyes physically, because that was going to be in a vision, and I need you to hear with your ears, because in that vision, he was able to hear what Yah told him. Everything I tell you about the regulations of the house and all about its Torah, which is what? Instructions. I need you to pay attention to who can enter the house and who must be excluded from the sanctuary. You are to tell the rebels, because that's the house of Israel in Yahweh's perspective. We don't like to hear it. We don't want to hear when Yah tells us that you're rebels, but he says they're rebels. Then he says this, the house of Israel, who are rebels. He tells them this, he says, this is what Yahweh Elohim says, the house of Israel, enough of all your disgusting practices. You brought in foreigners. They were uncircumcised, both in heart and flesh. See, so he wants them to know. So circumcision, again, is both of heart and flesh. Yah is concerned about the circumcision that has to do with your actual heart, and which is your mind and your flesh. Okay. You brought them into my sanctuary, which is my resting place, my home, and profane it. Yes, my house. God tells you that his sanctuary is his house. And when you offered my food, right, which is the fat and the blood, thus, in addition to all your disgusting practices, they broke my covenant. They broke it. And everything else they did that too. Instead of taking care of my holy things yourselves, you put these people in charge of my sanctuary. Who put these people in charge of his sanctuary? The house of Israel. Here's what Yahweh says: no foreigner uncircumcised both in heart and flesh is to enter my sanctuary, my home. No foreigner living among the people of Israel. Rather, the Lawiim, okay, who we've been talking about, who went far away from me when Israel went astray. Because Israel went astray, and then these guys went astray. They're going astray after their idols. They will, not shall, they will bear the consequences of their guilt. But they are to serve in my sanctuary. Okay, they will have charge of the gates, like we talked about, what their responsibilities are of the house and serving in the house. They will slaughter the burnt offerings and the sacrifice for the people. That will be their job. Okay, that's what they're going to do. And they will attend and serve them. Who? The Leviim. Okay, this is their job. They're going to become what they would call, in modern terms, a butcher. They're going to butcher the meat for the priest, and then they're going to bring it. So the people are going to bring it to them, right? And then they're going to butcher it, okay? And they're going to bring it to the Kohanim as an assistant, okay? Because the Kohanim don't have time to be butchering these things because they served them in the presence of their idols, okay? And became an occasion for them to sin, became an occasion of sin for the house of Israel. I'm going raising my hand against them, says Yahweh. And they, who the Leviim, will bear the consequence of their guilt. He hasn't forgotten what they've done to him. They abandoned him. They went far away from him in verse number 10. So you can see that Levi disconnected themselves from the Holy One. And even when he brings them back to him, they still will bear the consequences of their guilt. Yah is not going to let them go free. He says they will not approach me. They will not approach to serve me in the office of a Kohen or approach any of the holy things, especially holy things, but they will bear their shame for their disgusting practices which they committed. Talking about the Leviim. Yet I will put them in charge of the house and all its maintenance and everything to be done in it. However, the Kohanim, and this is in Ezekiel chapter number 44. So when someone comes to you and start talking, oh, there's no priesthood, that's all done away with. Yeshua's taking care of it. He's now the priest. You could tell him, well, let's go here and let's see what the creator of the heavens and the earth says. So, however, the Kohanim, who are Leviim, they're still from the same family. But this Kohanim here are priests. So he wasn't talking about the priests when he talks about the Kohanim. The Leviim. When he talks about Kohanim, he's talking about the priests. These are going to be the descendants of Zadok, which is from the line of Aaron, who took care of my sanctuary. So some of them abandoned his sanctuary and some took care of his sanctuary when the people of Israel went astray. There were someone who was faithful. So the descendants of Zadok, because Zadok was the one who was with David, and he stayed with Shlomo. These individuals from this family, from Zadok, and they took care of my sanctuary. See, so Yah's remembering what they did when the people of Israel went astray from me. They're the ones who will approach me. Okay, so these other ones will not approach me, the Leviim and the Kohanim from this family. Zadok will be able to approach me and serve me. Okay, so approaching Yah has with the idea of going to the altar. The Leviim will be able to cut the meat up, but they won't be able to go to the altar. It is they who will attend me. That means attend means serve as a servant to Yah and offer me the fat and the blood. So he's still going to do this. So when we hear David said a sacrifice and offering, now you didn't want it, but you gave me an ear, you opened my ears, and I said, here I am. People don't understand what that's really saying. They think that Yah, from a very, what they would call ground level, would think that Yah doesn't want offerings and that he doesn't want sacrifices. That's not true. Yah does love the smell of the offerings because it reminds him of his covenant. It reminds him of what he's done for Israel. It reminds him of what he swore to Abraham and Yitzchak and Yaakov. It reminds him of delivering Israel from their bondage. It reminds him of the mercy that he's shown to them. It reminds him of how wonderful and great he is. It reminds him. So they, who the priest, will enter my sanctuary, and they will approach my table, because Yah has a table. Forgive me. Yah has a table in his house. Yah has a table in his house. He has a table in his house, and they will serve me, minister to me, and perform my service. Yes. Once they enter the gates in the inner courtyard, they will wear linen clothing. They will not wear any wool while serving in the gates in the inner court or inside. They will wear linen turbans on their heads and linen underclothes on their bodies, and they are not to wear anything that makes them sweat. Yah doesn't like sweat when you come to him. But before going out to the people in the courtyard, they are to remove their clothes in which they minister, and they will lay them in the holy rooms, and they will put on other clothes so that they will not transmit holiness. Because holiness, from Yahweh's perspective, can be transmitted through clothing. If someone is to touch their clothing, holiness is transmitted. So when you look at the idea of Christ in the New Testament, they said, oh, she touched his garment, and he says, don't touch me. Well, she did. She touched him. So he's saying that holiness went from him into her. So that's not true, because he's not a Kohanim. That's just this is where they got it from. The writers of the New Testament understood the transmission of holiness could happen from clothing. People can touch their clothes because the clothes is touching them, and then whoever touches the clothes becomes holy. Holiness can be transmitted through touch. You understand? So they're not to shave their beards or let their hair grow long. No long hair. No, they got to go ahead and they got to keep their hair carefully trimmed. Carefully. He doesn't want them in there with long hair. And he says, no Kohen, who's a priest, is to drink wine when he enters the courtyard. Can he drink it outside the courtyard? Yes. But when he's there to perform service, he has to do it this way. They are not to marry a widow. They may not marry a widow or a divorcee, but they must marry virgins, descended from the house of Israel. Or if they did do a widow, she has a husband who used to be a Kohen. That's what the Yah's laws are. And here's what I wanted to bring you to. They are to teach my people the difference between holy and common, and enable them to distinguish between clean and unclean. They are to be judges, as I stated, in controversies, and they are to render decisions in the keeping with my rulings, my judgments. That's their job, and that's what they're always going to do. Yah's not done with them. They are judges in controversies. They are to render decisions, keep my rulings at my designated festivals. They are to keep and guard and do my laws and regulations, and they are to keep my Shabbats holy. And their job is to teach Israel how to do this. They are not to come to any dead person, because this would make them unclean. However, for a father, mother, son, daughter, brother, or sister who has no husband, a sister who has no husband, they may make themselves unclean. Anyone else, they're not allowed to touch him. After the priest, a Kohen, has been purified, he is to wait 7 days, and then on the day that he enters the sanctuary, then he goes into the inner courtyard to minister in the sanctuary. He is to offer his sin offering. He's to offer a sin offering. He's to offer a sin offering. Sin for what? For his uncleanness, by touching a dead body, which had to be his father's, mother's, brother's, sister who was never married. The inheritance is to be this. This is their inheritance. I myself am their inheritance. You're not to grant them any possession in the land of Israel. I myself am their possession. That is what it is as a responsibility to the tribe of Levi, whether you're a Lavoyim or whether you're not Kohanim. Yah is their inheritance. He is their possession. Yah is myself will be their possession. How would you like that? They are to eat the grain offerings and the sin offering. Is there going to be sin? Yes, there will be. Not deliberate, people. And if it is, the person who does it is going to die. and the offerings and the guilt offerings. And because you're always going to have guilt, because you're going to do stuff, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to have sin offerings. Why? Because you have bodily function. It's from your body. It's through the bodily functions. It's through death. It's through semen. It's through menstrual cycles. It's through defecation, urination. All it's through sweat. It's through all these things. Okay. And the first of all, first fruits of everything, and everything voluntary contribution of everything from all your offerings will be for the Kohanim. You are also to give the Kohanim the first of your dough, and that a blessing will rest on your house. The Kohanim, which are priests, are not to eat anything, bird or animal that dies naturally of itself or is torn to death. That's what it's about for them, for that family. So, as you see, based on what we know, based on what we've experienced today in this teaching, and we're just going right along, we found out so much about Levi. We found out a tremendous amount of things that can help us, that you and I can take from their life, and we can take from their character what Yah's expectations are for them. The next one that I want to have time to discuss today is talking about none other than Yehuda. Yehuda means praise. Praise has to do, change this color so it can look prettier. I love color. Praise has to do with one's hands. Okay. It has to do with one's hands. Hands that are lifted up. Hands that are lifted up, right? Hands that are open towards Yahweh. Okay. Yah chose this family to be a family of praise. Okay. He chose this family for a variety of reasons, but Yehuda is the power of the nation. Levi is the teacher of the nation. It's quite different. As you can see, that Yah is using different aspects of their character. Yehuda is the one who is in charge of military and warfare. They're the ones that go out first to fight everybody. They were the largest tribe out of all the tribes. They were the strongest of all the tribes. They are the leader of the tribes. Of all of them. Everyone looks to this tribe. This is the tribe where the kingship is, the rulership. This kingship is governed by the teacher of it, which he has to understand and know and have a mind, which we call in English a heart for the Torah. Your king has to love Yahweh's people, has to love Yahweh's words, have to love Yah, just like Yah loves the people. He's in an expression and a symbol of the love and the care that Yah has for his children. This in particular leader. One of the greatest leaders that we know and have always known about is David. David is the one who loves Yahweh. David's name is written with a dalet a Wa, and a Dalet. The Dalet represents a door. That's a door, and this is a door. A door is connected to a tent or a house. You see, it's a house. The Wa on the inside of his name here is called a tent peg. The tent peg is what makes a connection. We know that Yehuda is not Levi, meaning to be joined, but here it is. Yehuda within David's name is connection. And what is David connecting? He's connecting this door and this door together. The door is a house, and this is a house. So there's two houses, and the house that we have is Yisrael and the house of Yehuda. David is that force that connects them together. David is going to be the one that Yah is going to use to connect them together. That's who's going to be used to bring this house together. That's Yah's intention. When Israel had their first king, his name was what? Shaul.
Saul.
Yep, Saul. Okay. Shaul. Okay. And he was over the whole entire house of Israel. David comes along, right? And the house of Israel gets divided by David because everyone wanted to turn to David because David was the one who he says he's a man after Yah's what? Yah's what?
Own heart.
Own heart, right? We know that Yah talks about his heart. He's talking about his mind. David was not selfish. David was selflessness. He cared about the people. And he cared so much about them that when he talks about that he's a man after Yah's own heart, he's a man after Yah's own way of thinking. That's what he does. His mind was bent on Yah. All he cared was about how Yah felt. He didn't care about how the people felt in the sense that they were governing him like all the other kings of Israel. The kings of Israel at the northern kingdom, when the kingdom got divided, they were all evil. And they ran the people. So there's two ways that can happen. Either a king is ruling the people or the people is ruling them. Okay. Northern tribes were being ruled by evil kings. So therefore, all the people started doing that which was evil. In David's line, there were some evil kings, but they were evil because the people were controlling them. So they went along with what the people wanted to go along with because they wanted to stay in power. Isn't that not what happened when Israel came down to Shlomo's son and said, hey, we've been thinking that your fathers put these very hard, difficult tasks on us. And he went, instead of him listening to the wise men, he went and started talking to the people he grew up with, the school friends. And they told him, hey, don't listen to them. Let's do it this way. He listened to the people. You understand? He got moved by his friends. And as a result of that, Israel's kingdom got stripped away. Judah is a power player. He's the power of Yisrael. He's the one whom Yah has chosen among all the tribes to be the one to overpower everybody. Again, he's the largest, but let me show you about David right quick, so we can have some context here. So we won't say that, well, that was nice, but it kind of, can you show it to us? Show me what you're talking about. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. We can find this in the book of Ezekiel. And it could be in chapter number, several chapters, but we'll just go in Ezekiel and we'll go to chapter number 37. And it's right here at the end where it talks about where Yah says this, and this is kind of letting you know about the names that I told you that the names are coming together. He says, the word of Yahweh came into me in verse number 15. He says, human being, take one stick and write on it for Yehuda. Okay. And those joined with him among the people of Israel. Next, take another stick and write on it for Yosef, the stick of Ephraim. Okay. The reason why they're using Yosef there is because anytime you still talk about the Yosef, you're still talking about the oldest. He still had the right of the firstborn. He's still being recognized, even though his right was transferred onto his son Ephraim, the fruitful one, the bountiful one. Okay. And he says, which is the house of Israel. So you got the house of Israel and you have the house of Yehuda, the two houses that we're talking about. Okay. Right. So you got the house of Yehuda and you have the house for Ephraim, which is the house of Israel, and who are joined with him. Okay. Finally, bring them together, the two sticks, into one single stick, and so that they will become one in your hand. Then, when your people ask you what all this means, tell them Yahweh Elohim says, this I will take the stick of Yosef, which is in the hand of Ephraim, together with the tribes of Israel, who are joined with him, and put them together with the stick of Yehuda, and make them a single stick, so that they will become one in my hand. So Ezekiel is operating as what? As an example of what Yahweh's intention is to do with both of these houses, okay, these peoples. He says the sticks on which you are to write are to become one in your hand as they what? As they watch, okay? As they watch. You're making a single stick to become one in your hand as they watch. So then say to them that Yahweh Elohim says, I will take the people of Israel from among the nations where they have gone and gather them on every side and bring them back to their own land. I will make them in one nation in the land and on the mountains of Israel. Okay, and one king will be king for all of them. They will no longer be two nations, and they will never again be divided into two kingdoms, because that's what those houses are. Right now, the house of Israel is divided into two kingdoms. They will never again, once they're coming together, they'll never again defile themselves with their idols or their detestable things or any of their transgressions. But I will save them from all the places where they have been living and sinning. Okay. So when he mentions, he's talking about the whole entire nation has been living and sinning in all the places with their transgressions and the defilement of their idols. The time that you and I spoke the name of another God, J-U-S-U-S, this other God called Yahushua or whoever he may be, whatever God you're into, Allah, whoever it was, when the moment that came off of our lips, that's the moment that we transgress the Holy One of Israel, because he tells us never to let that name or any other name come off your lips. I'm going to show that to you. Okay. The moment that it happened, that's the moment that we have defiled ourselves. See, so we would think, well, I said it, it's not a big deal. I didn't mean it. I'm sorry. No, it doesn't work like that with Yah. He just showed us in Ezekiel 44 that if you did something against him, you're going to bear the consequence of that. Yah has to take us and he has to remove the things that we've done. The things that you and I have done, you and I would believe that, they're not detestable. You don't even see it as being detestable. You don't even really know what an idol is. You thought that the God that you served in the New Testament was the Elohim that we're talking about today, which is totally no, it's not. And it shatters us and it breaks our heart to think that the whole time, oh, that he's been with me. No, you just been existing. And anytime, and anyone who is doing that to this day is not serving the Holy One of Israel. Because you and I have to understand that there is a clear distinction between the God of the New Testament and the Old Testament, what they call the so-called Old Testament. The God of the New Testament is not, and I repeat, is not the Elohim of Israel. He's the Elohim of the world. He's the Elohim of the Christians. He's the Elohim of those who can commit sins and be forgiven by the sacrifice of the innocent. That's who he is. He's the God who will close his eye to that which has been done wrong. He's the Elohim that no longer examines or accepts the tribe of Levi as his priesthood. He is the Elohim that does not receive the offerings and the contributions that Yah has asked for Israel. He's the Elohim that allows you to commit deliberate sin and be washed away. He's the Elohim that allows you to eat whatever you choose to, because he will bless it for you and give you authorization to eat it. That's the Elohim of the New Testament. The Elohim of the Greeks. The Elohim of the kill the innocent. The Elohim that will allow his son to be anointed by a prostitute with the oil of a prostitute and accept those wages. See, so they're not the same. If you and I were still in that other side and he were to come, you and I will be what they would call guilty. You see? But Yah is saying that when you come, I'm going to deliver you and I will cleanse them so that they will be my people. See? Right now, we want to claim that we are his people while we're in a state of filth and why we've been sinning against the Holy One of Israel. And we want to say that we're his people right now. And he's saying, no, you're not. I have to cleanse you first. And I will be their Elohim. Right now, he has not been our Elohim because you and I have been calling on the name of another one. And it's not until you and I are cleansed that you and I can claim him as our Elohim. It's not about emotion. It's about the truth. The fact of the matter is, where we have been living and transgressing, sinning against the Holy One of Israel. My servant David will be king over them, and all of them will have one shepherd, which would be him. So if they say that some other one came and he's your shepherd and he died for you in John chapter number 8, it's a complete lie, because the two tribes, the two houses have not come together. If they're telling you that the people over in so-called Israel right now are there, and they're the tribe, the Jews, which are called Yehudim, and that they're coming together and that they're the people, no, they're not. Because Yah has not brought the two houses together. They're not one in his hand. Have any of us been living by my rulings? No, when you get back to your land and keep and observe my regulations in its fullest terms. They will live where? They're going to live in the land that I gave to Yaakov, my servant. They will live in the land I gave to my Yaakov, my servant. Yaakov's name is Yisrael. But when he talks about that I gave to him, I gave it to him as a promise, as an oath for him being my servant. That was his reward. You do what I say, you serve me, you're my servant, I will give you this land. Your ancestors lived. They will live there. They talking about what? Both kingdoms that have been united in my hand, they, their children, and their grandchildren. How long? Forever. David, my servant, another one of his servants, will be their leader forever. I will make a covenant of peace, a shalom with them. Has he made that covenant of peace with us right now? No. So are we his people right now in this sense of us being with him? No. Are we living in the land? No. Has he cleansed us? No. You and I are in captivity and we're filthy and we're unclean and we're doing the best that we know how. I will give them to them and I will increase their numbers through children, and my house or sanctuary will be among them forever. We got David's going to be their leader forever. They're going to live by my laws and live there forever, and my sanctuary will be there forever. His sanctuary is my home, will be with them, and I will be their Elohim. You cannot turn and change and make my words viable. Listen to me. Viable is a word I looked up and I was like, okay, what is viable? Viable means that you can fashion it and make something the way that you want to make it. So you can sit right with you. Yah doesn't want us to do that. You and I cannot seek Yah with a mindset of thinking that what we could do is make something more viable for us. We don't like the idea of being unclean. I get that. But who are you and I to go and to change the words that he said? See, he says that my home will be with them. I will be their Elohim and they will be my people. In context, when I set my sanctuary among them, then I will be their Elohim and they'll be my people. The nations will know that I am Yahweh, who sets Israel apart as holy. It's not just about us knowing this. It's about the nations knowing it. The only way that everyone will recognize and know and understand that he is who he says he is when he does this with Israel. When he sets us apart as holy. Then why are we keeping the Shabbat today? Because it's a holy day. It's because it's a command. That's because you've decided to what? Turn, which is shuv, your mind. You're changing your mindset. You're saying, I'm not going to put his Shabbat down. Even if I'm not there, I don't care. I don't have all the offerings for Sukkot, but I'm still going to keep it. I'm still going to memorialize it. I don't have the offering for the lamb for the Pesach. I'm going to still keep it because it's a sign forever. I'm going to take all the leaven out of my house. Why? Because Yah says so, because it's forever. It's a sign. And if you notice, everything is always connected to what he did for us in Mitzrayim. You see? The nations will know that I'm Yahweh, because that's the intent, is for them to know. He wants them to know that I'm Yahweh. The only way they're going to know it is if he sets us apart as holy. Taking us out, and to be holy means to be in your land and being cleansed and being forgiven and being washed. And also knowing that when my sanctuary is among them forever, because when he sets this sanctuary up, guess who goes back into service? Guess who goes back into service? Somebody tell me. Who's being reinitiated back into service? When he talks about the sanctuary, who's he talking about? Who's part of that? Who we've been learning? Who's in charge of this? Who's in charge of his home?
The Leviim.
There you go, the Leviim. They're in charge. And the Kohanim, who are going to be doing his service, they're in charge. That's when you know that you've been set apart as holy, because these individuals are going to teach us. Now, where's the sanctuary set at? Does anyone know? Where's the location? From what we know about the Torah, where's it at?
The sanctuary is what, Jerusalem?
Yes, and whose city? The city of what?
David.
There you go. So David is going to be in the city of David. You understand? because Yah will not forget the oath that he swore to David. I swore an oath to him. He will ever rule and always be the man that I love. Yes, Akoti, Pam. Akoti, you have a question? Akoti, Pam, you had a question? I can't hear you. Are you on mute? Is everybody still with me? Yes?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, good. All right, I want to show you one last thing before we close today on your Shabbat. I want to let you know a few things. Okay. 26 or 25, 20. Well, let's just start in verse number 17. It says this. You are not to take advantage. Let me see. Someone had a question. I can hear you, but you could not hear. No, I can't hear you. I don't know what happened. Akoti. You're not to take advantage of each other. Remember we started our study off talking about that? We're in the land because we're supposed to benefit each other. We're not supposed to take advantage of each other. This is in the Torah, okay? But you are to fear Yahweh, for I am Yahweh your Elohim. So is he talking about being scared of him? Or is he talking about, when he talks about fearing Yah, what does fear mean? Fear means that you're going to take the time to learn about Yahweh and to learn his ways, because if you learn his ways, you will not take advantage of each other. Because Yah is teaching us how to be just and how to rule justly. I am Yahweh, because I'm the one who's teaching you not to take advantage. Rather, you are to keep my regulations, and rulings, and act accordingly. If you do, because there's always a possibility that you will, and there's a possibility that you won't, you will live securely in the land. Why? Let's read. The land will yield its produce. You see that? That's what it's going to do. And you will eat until you have enough. And you will live there securely. Securely in the land. Securely there in the land. If you ask, if we aren't allowed to sow seed and harvest what our land produces, what are we going to eat in the 7th year? In context, chapter number 25 is talking about the year of Yuval. Okay. Yuval is, they call it Yuval, Yovel. I don't know how to spell it anymore. Yuval, which is called in English is Jubilee. Okay. Which means every 7 years you get rid of, or you let the land rest, and then every 49 years, you let the land rest in the 50th year. And so you don't plant anything. So what they're asking is, if we do what you're asking us to do, then how are we going to be able to have food? Okay, because they're always concerned, like with us, there's always a question that's being asked. How can we do this? How can we keep this law in the 7th year? You know what I'm saying? Then I will order my blessing on you during the 6th year. Don't worry about it. So that the land brings forth enough produce for all 3 years. Our produce has to do with being able to come out of the earth, right? So you can see that he's talking about food, because that's how people survive. That's how people survive. You can't survive without food, people. So the 8th year, you will sow seed and eat the old and store produce until the 9th year. So you don't do anything in the 7th year. You're not going to eat it. You're going to eat from the produce from the 6th year, in the 7th year, the 8th year, and until the 9th year, until that harvest is ready in the end of the 9th year, until the produce of the 8th year comes in. That's what you're going to do. You're going to have 3 years of just food that you stored up. It says you will eat the old stored food. But as you know, when Yah is working with us, things are not, they're not rotten. They're actually good. Like he did for the children of Israel, because they knew how to can and all that kind of stuff, how to preserve things. They understood how to do all that. You can ask yourself today, if you go to the store, we want to be honest, how long does your fruit and vegetables last as soon as they hit your cabinets or hitting your vegetable bins? How long they last? A week? You understand? So there's something about the food that's in the land that's different than any other land. It has life in it. The extended shelf life is a lot longer than what you and I are used to. Let's see. Sorry. So try as we may, we are not clean until Yah clean. Yes, exactly. We're not clean until Yahweh says so. Yahweh will raise from the dead. Or does this mean no? David is going to have a man who's raised from his loins, from the family of David. He's going to have a descendant who's going to raise up. The Yah's going to raise him up. And that's in chapter number 30 of Jeremiah. All right. Now listen to this. The land is not to be sold in perpetuity, because the land belongs to who? Who's the land belong to?
It belongs to Yahweh.
It belongs to Yahweh. That's who it belongs to. You are only foreigners and temporary residents with me. Now, how you like that? That's what we are to him. You and I are only foreigners and temporary residents. Did he say eternal residents? No. You're only going to live a certain amount of time in my land. You're a foreigner in my land. You're a temporary resident. That's why I don't want you mistreating anybody who is a foreigner or a stranger or any other temporary residents. Because just like I'm treating you well, you need to treat them well. Does this make sense? That hurts our feelings, doesn't it? Huh? Is anybody's feelings hurt like mine was? What do you mean I'm a foreigner? Yeah, I'm a foreigner. What do you mean you're a temporary resident? Let's go here and let's end it on this. Verse number 38 says what? It says this: I am Yahweh. That's who I am. Your Elohim, who brought you out of the land of Mizraim. I'm the one who brought you out in order to give you something. I'm going to give you the land of Canaan to be your Elohim. That's the reason why I brought you out. I brought you from this land in order to give to you. That's the verb. I want to give you, number one, I want to give you land. And the second thing that I want to give you is I want to be your Elohim. Now, why do we want any more than that? Why? Why do you want more from him? Why do you need to have the fancy house, the fancy car, and all these things? Did he tell them that? What did he say? I'm bringing you out of this place out of your slavery to make you go to a land so you can have some food to eat, so you can raise your kids and you don't have to be oppressed. And I'm going to be your Elohim. So in context, our Elohim is the Elohim of that land, because that's his land. He just told us in verse number 23 that it's my land. Every land has its own God. So the land that we're in right now had their own God, and his name is the God of the New Testament, known as JC. You see? If a member of your family has become poor and sells himself to you, because it happens, do not make him do the work of a slave. You're rather to treat him like an employee or a tenant. He will work for you until the year of Yovel. I did spell it wrong, didn't I? I put a U, I put a U, and I put a somewhere else. It's Yovel. okay, to this 50th year. Okay, then you got to set him free. All right. So then he will leave you, he and his children with him in a year of Yovel, because it's a time of release, and he will return to his own family, regain his possession of his ancestral land, because that's what I gave you. For they are my slaves. Do you hear what he just said to you and I are? We're his slaves. We're his servants, whom I brought out of the land of Mizraim. If I brought you out of the land of Mizraim, you thought that you were just going to not be a slave anymore. You're my slave. And if you are my slave, you belong to me. And if you read my Torah, you know I could do to you whatever I want to do to you, because you're my slave. I'm going to treat you right. I'm going to be fair to you, but you will do work for me. You and I have decided to call this calling upon ourselves. You and I, in order to be Israel, have decided that we're going to do what Yah says. That's why he says, you're my servant. That's why, because you're Yah's slave. We're a servant. We're his slaves. That's why he told you, I need you to remember that you're a slave, because I took you from one service of being oppressed and being beaten and not being paid. Now I said, I want you to be treated fairly. So now that you belong to me, I'm going to show you how a servant's supposed to be treated, because you too can have a servant. You too can have someone who's a slave to you. And when you get them, I want you to treat them the way that I treat you. Because at the end of the day, the whole world will serve me. And if you know how to serve me, then you could teach them how to serve me. And you'll let them know this is how we serve our Elohim. That's your duty and your responsibility as being my servant. You're not my servant just so you can run around and saying that you belong to me. You have work to do. You see? So you're to treat him this way. Then you will leave you, he and his children with him, and return to his own family, regaining possession. For they are my slaves whom I brought out of the land of Egypt. They are not to be sold as slaves. He gives us a warning. Do not treat him harshly, but you fear Yahweh, your Elohim. Concerning the men and women that you have as slaves, because they had their slaves. You are to buy men and women slaves from nations surrounding you. You may also buy the children of foreigners living with you, members of their families born in your land. You may own these. You may also bequeath them to your children to own. From these groups, you may take your slaves forever. They could be your slaves. But as far as your brothers, the people of Israel, are concerned, you're not to treat each other harshly. That is a command from the Holy One of Israel. If a foreigner living with you has grown rich and a member of your people have become poor and sells himself to the foreigner living with you, or a member of the foreigner's family, he may redeem himself. And so then it goes on talking about Yovel and what that goes on. I wanted to bring out the point, and the fact is that you and I have been identified as slaves to the Holy One of Israel. We have to accept this life. We have to accept the responsibility. That's why when you read the Torah, you'll find out what happens to a slave if they don't do what their master says. And the master can do whatever he wants to do with the slave. All that was in the reason. So the Most High gives us this to let us know this is how you're supposed to treat your slaves. Your servants. Same thing, same word interchangeably as aved, which is the same thing, to serve or to be a servant. Okay? This is what he's asking. Oh, and you and I are not supposed to treat anybody harshly, even your slaves. You're not supposed to treat them harshly. You're supposed to be fair and equitable. You and I chose this a long time ago. You said, I didn't choose it. Yes, you did. And I'm going to show it to you. You chose it. And your ancestors chose it for us. So let's see what they said. Okay. So you can't say that I made it up. Let's see what he says that we said. To Moshe, Yahweh said, come up to Yahweh, you, Aharon, Nadav, Avihu, and the 70 leaders of Yisrael. Prostrate yourselves at a distance. And while Moshe alone approaches Yahweh, the others are not to approach. See that again. And the people are not to go up with him. Moshe came and told the people everything that Yahweh had said, including the rulings. Okay. Moshe came and told the people everything Yahweh had said, including all the rulings. The people answered with one voice, and this is what they said: we will obey every word that Yahweh has spoken. Not only did they say they were going to obey it, but listen to what else they said. I want to give full context. Moshe wrote down all the words of Yahweh. He rose up early in the morning, built an altar at the base of the mountain, and set up 12 large stones to represent the 12 tribes of Israel. He sent the young man out of the people of Israel to offer burnt offerings and sacrifices, peace offerings of oxen to Yahweh. Moshe took half of the blood, put it in basins, the other half he splashed against the altar. Then he took the book of the covenant and he read it aloud so that the people could hear. And they responded, everything that Yah has spoken, we will do and obey. You and I have taken upon ourselves this covenant. And what one may call it is, we mean what they call an oath of homage. We made an oath of homage. And therefore, because Moshe took this blood and he sprinkled it on the people and he said, this is the blood of the covenant, which Yahweh has made with you in accordance with all these words. We made an oath of homage. We said that we would do everything that he said. We will do it, we will listen to it, and we will obey it. This is a responsibility and a duty for Yisrael. Yaakov is Yah's servant. Yah changes his name to Israel, meaning you have overcame and you have power with Yah. It's not until you and I do what Yah says that you and I have power. We will fully be realized as Israel the moment that we do what Yah says. That's what the Torah portion is all about, is that they're about to go into this land and receive a blessing of the land to be beneficial to all the nation. They weren't going in there just to be going in there as like some people who just don't have any organization. They don't have any rulership and they have no leadership. Yah has put different families in charge to make sure and to ensure that the ways of Yah and the majesty of the Holy One is going to be lifted up, exalted, and known as the supreme being. And we're a supreme people. And because we're supreme, it means that our judgment is going to be very, very harsh on us. When Yahweh comes back and he decides to judge his people, because he will, he's going to judge the peoples with fire. He's going to kill his people. The ones who belong to him, that have decided that they're going to rebel against him by still worshiping other gods. There's nothing that you and I can do to change that, because it's ultimately everyone's decision on what God they're going to serve. He's said, he's spoken to us and he's given us his words through the Torah. That's why the Torah is so important. That's why you've done your Torah portions. I say this in closing, that we're at the end of the Davarim of the scroll of Moshe. We have learned a lot over the last month or so, or months. And we're about to restart our cycle again, because now we're going into we're just ending into our fall, getting into our fall season. And we're about to go into our winter season after this. And during our winter season, we're going to learn how creation was to come about. We're going to start back again in the book of Bereshith, and we're going to work our way through Shemot and Vayikra and Bamidbar and Davarim. And we do it all over again. That's what we do every single week. We go through this and we pick it. And every time we go through, we're going to pick up more and more and more. Yah doesn't expect us to read the Torah and think that we have it all figured out. It's a plan. It's a guidance plan, that how Yah has designed it. He knows how to design it for his people. He wants to direct us and lead us and guide us into his ways, not so we can be a religious people, but so we can come to being more intimate, to get to try to understand what the Holy One of Israel said. We chose this method of being taught through Moshe. And because we chose that, that's what we have to accept. Moshe died at the end of this Torah portion. He died. And it said that there will never, ever be another prophet like Moshe. And that word for never, ever, ever means never, ever, ever. That means lo, ever. There will never exist another one who would know Yah face to face. Anyone else who comes after Moshe is one that Yah spoke to a dream or a vision. He never speaks to anyone else like the way he spoke to Moshe. It is our duty and responsibility to guard the words of Moshe. Okay? Don't allow people to use the prophets to kind of say, well, the prophet said this, so this kind of goes against what Moshe says. If it had to be weighed out between what the prophet said or what Moshe said, you go with Moshe said, from the understanding of what he said. Because those are the words that Yah told us to never add or subtract from, to do not diminish, do not go to the right or to the left of anything that I have said. The Torah is a closed book, but our enemies have opened it and said, well, this goes along with it, this goes along with it, and this goes, you can understand the Torah by reading the prophets. No. The prophets are given to warn Israel. They're not given to do anything else but to give Israel warning to turn back to the Torah. They're not instructions for life. They're not. They're there to warn, to tell you what the existing condition is of the people and what is it that they need to do to get out of that condition. There's a time for remembering certain things, okay? The Psalms are for encouragement. The Proverbs is for wisdom. The other books are to kind of give us an idea of what someone else's experiences may have been. But ultimately, the only book that you and I need to be studying and reading and looking to for instructions is the Torah. It's a closed book. It's not open. Okay. When they canonized it, they put other books alongside with it because they knew that if they didn't have the Torah, they have no basis or foundation for anything. Nothing. If you took the Torah off the rest of the books, if you took the Torah and all you had was the prophets, it wouldn't make any sense. That's why they added all those other books. Am I saying that the prophets don't exist? No, they do. But you got to understand they're historical, and they're telling the children of Israel what they're going to experience and what's coming down the pipeline. So it gives us a heads up, because Yah did say, I'm going to speak to prophets, but he's never spoken face to face, like a conversation, like he's done with Moshe. Moshe is the greatest prophet who's ever lived. And there has not been another one ever since him, and there never will be. Moshe is the one that the prophets and the kings have said, return to the teaching of Moshe, the Torah of Moshe. It's in the book of Malachi, it's in the book of Kings, it's in the book of Chronicles, it's in the book of Isaiah, Ezekiel, it's all over the place. But our people don't know that. They've been taught biblical, Bible. So, look at all of it and try to put it all together, make it all gel together so it can all make sense. Everything you need is in the Torah. Everything we need is in that book, okay, or those writings, that scroll, okay, that was divided into 5 different divisions. A scroll is divided in 5 different divisions, 5. That tells us a story about this relationship. We've come to the end of that story. We've come to the end of that narrative right before they're supposed to go into this land. You understand? So why was the Torah given? The Torah is given to prepare people to go into a land. This is Yah's way of communicating with us to let us know, before you come into the land, I have to get you prepped. I have to get you ready. I have to prepare you so you can go into that land that I promised to your ancestors. In the Torah, you find out about the covenants. You find out about my relationships. You find out that I revealed myself to you differently than I revealed myself to your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I never revealed myself to them as Yahweh. I've never revealed myself to them as Yahweh, the Yohe-Wahe. Never. Let me show it to you so I can make you think. Because you'll be like, whoa, wait a minute. Are you saying that they didn't know him? They did not know him the way that we know him. And he makes it clear that they don't know him that way. Let me see. It's in the book of Ezekiel, Shemot, but let me see, make sure I got the right chapter. Because it's talking about Vayera. Give it to you guys. Oh, there you are. Chapter 6, not 7. Chapter number 6. Okay. So it says this. Yahweh said to Moshe, now you will see what I'm going to do to Pharaoh. With a mighty hand, he will send them off. He will force, or with force, he will drive them from the land. Yahweh spoke to Moshe. He said to him, I am Yahweh. I appeared to Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov as El Shaddai. Although I did not make myself known to them by my name, Yohe-Wahe. Also with them, I established my covenant to give them the land of Canaan, the land where they wandered about and lived as foreigners. Moreover, I have heard the groaning of the people of Israel from the Egyptians are keeping in slavery, and I have remembered my covenant. Therefore, say to the people of Israel, I am Yahweh. I will free you from the forced labor of the Egyptians and rescue you from their oppression and redeem you with an outstretched arm and with great judgments. I will take you as my people, and I will be your Elohim. Then you will know that I am Yahweh, your Elohim, who freed you from forced labor of the Egyptians. I will bring you into the land which I swore to give to Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. I will give it to you as your inheritance. I am Yahweh. Moshe said this to the people of Israel, but they wouldn't listen to him because they were so discouraged and their slavery was so cruel. Yes, Claudie.
So yes, Brother David, yes. So I hear when you say that the Yahweh gave us the Torah,
Yes.
which of course is the 5 books, and of course the prophets is to advise Israel. I also just want to make a comment because when I read the books, when I read Genesis, I read about the history of Israel, how it began, how Israel began.
Yes.
Now,
oh, you have to unmute yourself. Something happened. Unmute yourself, Claudie.
I did. Okay. So when I get into the books of Exodus and Leviticus, then I start reading about the laws. Exodus 20, when the covenant was handed down to Israel.
Yes.
So, and again, all this is going on in my spirit. So I am understanding from that point that yes, Yahweh is saying that to tell the children of Israel to obey my laws, my Torah, my covenant. But
Yes.
in Genesis, I see the history of a nation. I see
Yes.
the birth of a nation. I
Yes.
don't see the actual laws in there. So I am thinking, I'm thinking that what Yahweh wants us to actually learn and read, which is his way of life, his Torah, which begins in Leviticus, somewhere in Exodus, Exodus 20 and Leviticus. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Oh, I understand. Yes, what
Again,
you're doing is you're properly showing the idea of the Torah. You're showing that, okay, so he shows how he builds his family, how he introduces himself, how it all began. But he says that in the book of Noah or Genesis, Bereshith, he gives Noah, he gives him commands. He gives a command in the garden. But in terms of exclusivity about the instructions on how to live in his land, you're absolutely 100% unequivocally correct. The teaching of the Torah begins, of the written instructions, begins in chapter number 20, okay, when Yah spoke to them. Prior to that, in chapter number 15, he tells them that he doesn't introduce them to offerings. He tells them, if you live by my laws, he's prepping them, he's getting them ready. But yes, you're right. The Torah is instructions. So the other parts of our book, which they call the Torah, they're just giving it a general name. They're just saying this is the Torah. The Torah is the instructions, which starts at chapter number 20. It starts at 20 and it goes all the way through, and it goes into the book of Leviticus and tells them how, and then he begins to share with them the judgments, and he gets to show them the terumah, the things that they're supposed to give. There talks about the offerings. He starts breaking everything down. But in 20 begins that covenant, that marriage contract, which consists of 10 words. And the 10 words is not the Torah. That's the covenant. It's part of the Torah, but it's not the Torah. The Torah is the instructions. And now that's where we get confused. Like, you have to look at, what are the instructions? The instructions on what? On the judgments, the instructions on the moedims, which are the appointed times, the instructions on what to eat and how to do it, the instructions how to offer, the instructions how to cleanse your body, the instructions on how to deal with the dead, the instructions. So that's why he says the Leviim are the ones who're supposed to teach these things to you, because they're close to me and I'm using them to join you to me, because you guys messed up. You guys made they made that golden calf. And the moment that they made that golden calf, it severed the closeness that you and I were supposed to have. So since they did that, I came down and said, hey, I'm ready to kill everybody. Moshe said, hold off. Then and Moshe got angry. Who's with Yah? And then boom, the Levi family came over. He said, okay, you guys, made yourselves a name today. Now you've shown yourself that you're going to be loyal to the Holy One. You're going to guard what Yah is talking about. So he chose them. And as a result of that, that's what the relationship is. So it's not like Yah does forgive, but he doesn't forget what Israel does against him. He doesn't. He has it written down and he reminds them. That's why he's always calling them rebels, because he knows what they've done. And he's just trying to show us, like, you guys don't buy in the idea of Christianity where you guys have done something that's all forgotten. No, you got to pay the consequence for that. I'll forgive you, but it means you're still going to pay. Yeah, David committed adultery and murder. I forgave him, but his whole family still got destroyed. There's consequences. And Yah's saying you're going to bear the consequences of your actions. So you're absolutely correct. I know what you're saying, that there is divided into history. It's divided into, well, in Genesis 26:5, he tells Yitzchak, your father did everything I asked him to. He obeyed me unreservedly. He did everything I asked him to do. He kept my commandments. So Yah gave him commandments. So it's not as if Yah has never given a command to anyone, but the way that he's dealing with Israel is different than he's dealt with anybody else. He's given us these instructions because he knows that Israel is a rebellious people. He knows that, and he knows that if you and I are going to live in that land and he's going to live among us, then we're going to have to be the purveyors of truth. We're going to have to be the ones who are going to have to stand on his side and have to be able to show people how to do it. So he teaches us through the land. That's where we're getting taught. We get taught through the land. Right now, we're not in the land, but we're being taught as well. We're being taught what happens when you don't do what I say. I keep my promise. I swore oath, if you guys go against me, I'm going to scatter you. Did I scatter you? Yes. So you should know I keep my word. Just like I told you I'll scatter you, I'll be the same one to gather you. Because I want to. When you guys, after you guys have been there and you do your time, and as you're there during your time, you decide you want to make up your mind and serve me, great. If you don't want to do what I'm saying, that's fine too. Doesn't matter. Because at the end of the day, I will be served. Thank you for that contribution. You want to add to that, Sister Claudia?
Yes, indeed. Thank you.
You can add more to that if you like.
I'm fine. Thank you.
Oh, it was a great contribution. Anyone else? So quiet today on this wonderful Shabbat. Love you, Jay. I know you're listening. So thank you guys today. I understand that. So next week, we're going to be going back and we're going to circle back and we're going to go through our cycle again. And we're going to go into creation and we're going to go into all that kind of stuff. So that's wonderful. Hope you guys enjoyed this this time in Davarim. It's been a really wonderful book. A lot of great things, a lot of great stuff. Okay. Praise the Holy One of Israel.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. I'm going to do our little outro right here so I can keep us consistent with everything. Here it says, Baruch atah Yahweh Eloheinu, Melech haolam, Yasar or, Uvarei koshek, Osei shalom, Uvarei ethakol. That means, blessed are you, Yahweh. You are our Elohim. You're the king of the world. He's forming the light. He's creating darkness. He's making peace, and he's creating all things. Praise be to the Holy One of Israel. You guys have a wonderful week, and we'll be beginning our series on the Torah portion starting in Bereshith next week, which is exciting. And it's going to be, the first book is called Bereshith. Yeah, Bereshith. In the beginning, in the summit, in the beginning, and you're going to learn some really exciting things about Bereshith. Everything has a beginning, and Yah tells us the future from the past. That's what he does. He tells us the end at the beginning. Interesting, huh? Hallelujah.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.